TV.
That's another thing. Now, let me jump in with that. Just to talk about media frenzy, and we're going to get to this New Orleans thing, this new JFK business. But this John Benet Ramsey thing, this Thailand, when you saw all of those photographers and whatever, those were folks from all over the world. This case had, we're not the only ones who were tabloid nuts. This case was talked about in England, Australia, you name it.
I've had news conferences in Asia a few times. You know, there's cases I went over for Taiwan. Remember the Carnegie Mellon young professor, and then the president who was shot at, and in between those was the grand old man of the opposition party, and then we had the situation between Singapore and the Philippines, and I went over there for that case and so on. I want to tell you something. They make any press conference that I have ever participated in, and, you know, there have been some big cases on, look like, man, There's 75, 100 people if there's one.
Really?
I mean, they got cameras. They're standing on each other's shoulders. I don't understand. I mean, I'm telling you, it is absolutely unbelievable. And I don't.
Are there any more or less rude than the reporters in this country? Or about the same?
No, that's about the same. Yeah, about the same. They got to get there with their cameras. Yeah. So you were asking me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about. Let's start with this.
My Louisiana. Back at.
All right. Let's start.
Nolans.
Let's start with let's start with a take on New Orleans in general.
All right. Well, first of all, I went down last October, and I did 30 autopsies in 3 days. The coroner, Dr. Frank Minyard, is an old friend of mine, and I'd called Frank and offered my services pro bono, and I flew down, paid for my own way and everything, and lived there in a trailer. Sometimes there was running water. Sometimes
you
there
trailer
wasn't.
trash, you.
Trailer trash, yeah. And I did 30 autopsies, and in fact I set a record.
And he was on the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, yeah, right. In fact, I was all set to do 35, 36, honest, and the last one was a gunshot wound case. There's this woman, nobody knew about a gunshot wound case. They still don't know whether she was murdered or committed suicide. So then I get a call from the Attorney General. Dr. Minyard had recommended me.
This is the Attorney General of Louisiana.
Yeah, okay. Of Louisiana. From a Deputy Attorney General for the AG. Would I review some cases of deaths from Memorial Hospital? I think by that time I had heard some rumors about what might have happened. So I reviewed 4 cases.
All right, now let's jump in. Memorial Hospital, what is alleged to have happened there?
Okay.
How many people?
Memorial Hospital, which used to be called Baptist Hospital, so that people who may remember New Orleans from years ago, some people still refer to it as Baptist Memorial, which is now owned and operated by Tenet, a national health care organization which has had quite a few problems of its own around the country. It's the largest hospital in New Orleans. And they then were in bad shape with the floods and Hurricane Katrina, and they were evacuating people. Now, many people were able to get out on rowboats that would pull up, and other people could not get out on rowboats. On the 7th floor, that hospital had sublet to an outfit called Healthcare. And these are people who were seriously ill, moribund, many who had or were going to have serious surgery with enough disease processes to fill a pathology textbook.
But they were not necessarily all terminal in the traditional sense of the word.
Right.
Okay, just serious stuff here.
Seriously ill, but
okay.
not terminal, like the next day, the next
like
week.
Cancer,
so
you got 2 weeks ago. Okay.
You wouldn't have wanted to take out insurance policies on them, but, they weren't going to die. All right. So it turns out, when this is all over, that they have 45 deaths in a short period of time.
God.
And then they run these for toxicology, and it turns out that 24 of them have significant levels of morphine and or Versed. Versed is an anesthetic agent, not really used as an analgesic. It's used for usually short operations. I've had it 2-3 times. When I've had a couple of minor procedures and so on, it's great. It knocks you out, and you have no memory thereafter. So they find that a couple dozen of these people, and then they begin to check records, and they see there's some question about whether any of this had ever been ordered for them. So they send me 4 cases, and I look them over, and I see morphine and Versed in significant levels in 4 people, and these 4 people, none of whom had had the drugs ordered for them. And I wrote my opinion, and it was based on my opinion that they made the move against the doctor and the 2 nurses, and arrested them a few weeks ago. Now, what is going on is...
Let me jump in now. You were involved in 4 cases. Was there 1 doctor and several nurses who have since been arrested as a result?
Well, 1 doctor and 2 nurses were arrested.
Okay,
right?
now, as 1 doctor, 2, but was it for those 4 deaths or for the 24 deaths, or where are we with this as we speak?
They have not gotten that specific because there are other healthcare providers involved. Not only that 1 doctor and those 2 nurses. There's several others, and there are several other deaths.
So in other words, you're saying there were several other health care providers and several other doctors and nurses who may be involved in all of this. Okay.
Exactly.
Holy cow.
And you've got the interesting questions of how did these people come to have morphine and Versed, which they weren't on. Well, somebody.
Now, let me jump with a quick question here. The four people, the 4 cases you investigated,
initially, yeah.
The diseases that they had, would these be diseases or whatever their maladies were? Would these be things that, under some circumstances, might require either of these drugs?
Very good question. And then you have to look at the medical records to see whether they were in pain and whether they required any of the drugs. And in those cases, nobody was in pain or complaining. Then you've got other people similarly situated. A couple of them were actually semi-comatose, definitely not in pain. So the last thing,
and they were given these drugs.
The last thing you want to give them is morphine, which is a respiratory depressant. Mm-hmm. Morphine depresses the lungs because it depresses the brain.
Now, I got to pause on that note.
Yeah.
I want to come back. What a fascinating story, which
is.
I truthfully know very little about.
It's just beginning.
I can imagine. My gosh, you get involved in everything, don't you?
Well,
tomorrow, my buddy Lawrence will be here, and Elaine with her happy, healthy household is. Pat Summerall on Thursday. Still want to know about the 50-yard field goal they beat the Browns with. Doug and the group on Friday. Doug and the producers on Monday. The Moldy Oldie Golden Gas is 50s, early 60s rock and roll radio program. The Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. Original rock and roll each and every Sunday night from 6 until 12 midnight. That's an hour. Sister station 1320 WJOS. Dr. Wecht is finding out where he's going to be spending the remainder of the day. You may make your phone call. We'll be back. AM News Talk 1360.
Hey there, got a match?
All right, back with Dr. Wecht. Well, I actually read Irving Kristol wrote that. Predorit's one of those guys. Commentary Magazine is I guess you call it a neoconservative publication.
Yes, it is.
And
Hoerth.
Yeah, Predorit's.
He's one of the
his
godfathers.
Son is John.
John
Predorit's
of the neoconservative movement. Yeah,
right. Irving Kristol is Bill Kristol's father. Irving
yeah.
Kristol is married to Gertrude Himmelfarb.
Himmelfarb, right.
Predorit's is married to Midge Decter.
Midge Decter,
you got
Midge
it. Decter,
yeah, that's right.
No, I've read reading commentary. Krauthammer contributes to them, which is one of the reasons why I read commentary. But anyway, one of those guys wrote an article about 3 or 4 years, or maybe it was 3 or 4 months after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Cold War ostensibly being over, and whoever it was wrote it, said, there's going to come a time when you wish for the good old days of the Cold War, and we're at those times.
You knew the enemy was Russia, and they knew us, and neither was going to be dropping bombs on the other, and so on. And similarly, I believe with China, and they're not looking to do anything. Maybe locally, squeezing Taiwan here and holding on to Tibet, etc. But this business with the Islamo-fascist, and that's the name. These are. Hey, did you read the story, Doug, about the Muslim a man in Brescia, Italy, who slit his 18-year-old daughter's throat because she was wearing blue jeans
Yes, I
and
did
dating
see.
an Italian
I
boy
did see,
and
yeah.
buried her in the yard? Did you read the story in Malaysia of the young woman who wants to become a Christian and they're taking her to court and so on? I mean, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
I know.
This guy, what's the heck is his name? He interviewed these young boys. He did some wonderful interviews. I saw there was something. They have nothing to live for. They can't do anything with girls. They can't do anything that give young men pleasure, whether it's playing ball, listening to music, and so on. They've got no life, Doug. It's not about, hey, is your kid going to get into med school? Is your daughter going to apply to college? Are you going to get a new job? Are you going to be promoted? There's no life. There's nothing in it. And you say, well, why don't you give them something to live for, and why don't you stop causing them to feel downtrodden? Not going to make any difference, baby, because it is their religion which will not permit them to do those things. It is not the United States. It is not Israel. Their religion will not even accept their own secular leaders. They don't want Mubarak, and they don't want a monarchy either. They don't want the king of Saudi Arabia. They want people like Nasrallah and Osama bin Laden, and that's the way they're moving.
Absolutely. I just take one of the